Since the infancy of the sport of mixed martial arts, we have seen a wide variety of techniques used by athletes in order to best their opponent, from vicious head kicks to constricting and bone-snapping submissions. But a particular weapon that seems to be making a surge in the modern-day sport is the humble yet devastating leg kick. The most recent evidence that stands out in recent memory is Dustin Poirier's destruction of Conor McGregor's leg back in January of 2021. However, for a technique that is often overlooked in today's game, we are going to take a dive into the roots of the leg kick and where we first see the signs of how deadly this technique first came to be. Let's take a trip down memory lane to Buffalo on September 8th, 1995, where the Ultimate Fighting Championship was in its humble beginnings. And coincidentally enough, this was to be the first and last event the New York natives would have in a very long time.
Ken Shamrock and Royce Gracie truly dominating the first events of the UFC, it was clear that grappling was the superior skill set at the time, with no discipline having a definitive answer to those who operated at a truly elite level in the ground game. Ken Shamrock and Oleg Taktarov were grueling a 33-minute fight which ended in a draw that night, with Shamrock retaining his title in a super fight championship bout. But the star of the show that night was a Brazilian submission wrestler and soon-to-be devastating striker by the name of Marco Ruas. The Brazilian entered the 8-man tournament that night, standing 6'1" and weighing 210 pounds, and nobody would ever expect how the results of that night would end.
The tournament got underway with Jerry Harris and Paul Verhoeven's disputing a battle of Kyokushin versus trap fighting. Both men are absolute giants, standing 6'8" and boasting a combined weight of 560 pounds. Verhoeven wasted no time in grabbing onto Harris and used the 40-pound weight to his advantage, as he was offered little to no resistance in ascertaining the first takedown of the fight, taking him 6 seconds to do so. From here, Verhoeven again almost effortlessly swam over to side control and took the backside position of Harris, where he was able to rain down a flurry of elbows, prompting a quick tap from Harris and giving us the opening victory of the night in just over a minute. Without even breaking a sweat, Verhoeven had put the whole bracket on notice.
So the polar bear advances, and it didn't take long.
Our second fight saw Mark Hall take on Harold Howard in a striker's delight, displaying Taekwondo versus karate. Howard would come out and put on immediate pressure with strikes up against the cage, which would lead to him shooting for the first takedown of the fight and landed straight into full mount. However, Hall, wise to it, managed to beautifully sweep his opponent immediately without taking any damage. From here, we got to see how good Hall was as he postured up and stacked Howard, and the onslaught of vicious punches that followed were spine-tingling for the viewers in attendance and those watching at home. Within 2 minutes, a battered and bloody Howard was submitting due to strikes, and his face after the fight was also a reminder of how real and devastating this relatively new sport was. Remco Pardol and Ryan Parker were next to lock horns in what would be a striker versus grappler matchup.
It wasn't long after Big John McCarthy started these men off that a jiu-jitsu veteran Pardwell was able to grab hold of Parker against the cage and execute a textbook hip toss that landed him to a dominant side saddle position against a striker. Things went from bad to worse for Parker as he was caught in an armbar from this position, whilst being pounded on the same time from Pardwell. However, he showed great resilience and was able to maintain composure to nullify and fight out the submission, only at the expense of giving his opponent full mount. It was only a matter of time as Pardwell methodically worked to constrict the airflow to Parker's brain, and ultimately the use of the gi would horn Parker as Pardwell used his own lapel against him to instigate the tap, declaring Pardwell the winner of the fight. The fourth and final fight of the quarterfinals would see our future champion Marco Rua do battle against Larry Curiton. This would be a contest of Vale Tudo, boxing of the American Curiton. As the fight began, Rua would march forward at Curiton and dive for the larger man's legs, showcasing his brute strength and slamming his opponent to the mat within 30 seconds. However, the kickboxer replied by sweeping the Brazilian and ending up in the guard, where he would look to posture up and throw some strikes of his own. It's no surprise that Brazilian was composed off his back, and he was able to keep a tight guard around Curiton to prevent much damage. Unfortunately for Curiton, he made the mistake of trying to stand up in the Brazilian's guard, which prompted Rua to attack the leg of his adversary, and lock him in a tight heel hook. And as we all know in today's game, it doesn't take much to tap from a devastating submission.
The semifinals were set with quick finishes from all winners, and the fans were in for a treat with the remaining fights that evening. The opening fighter from the tournament, Paul Valorans, was set to put on another performance against Mark Hall. The fans in attendance were expecting a little more resistance from the Giants' opponent this fight, as Hall had looked so good in the first fight. However, it couldn't have gone any different. Once again, Valorans marched down the smaller opponent and was able to take him down at ease, where he would use his sheer size and strength to put Hall in a key lock, giving him a submission win in less than a minute. With this, we had our first finalist of the evening, and it didn't look like anybody would come close to beating him.
104, a key lock by Paul Valorans, and Mark Hall had to tap out.
This would leave Marco Hua and Remco Podal get down to business in our penultimate fight of the evening, and after what we'd seen from Valorans that night, none of the pairs showed that they were going to be intimidated by the challenge. After throwing an early leg kick, perhaps a preview of what would be later to come, Podal was later able to clinch Hua and tie him up against the cage. Without hesitation, he locked Hua in a standing guillotine, and things weren't looking too good initially for Hua. A credit to the gas tank and composure of Hua, the next 5 minutes were spent fighting leg locks, which Hua was able to show elite level defense and slowly drain away at Podal's stamina. After 12 minutes of fighting, the contest looked to be swinging into Hua's favour, where he was able to pass guard into mount, and this would be the beginning of the end for Podal. A clearly gassed Podal would submit purely due to position that was gained by Hua, and you have to think regardless of there being no submission locked in, it would have only been a matter of time for Hua.
So we now come to our final fight of the evening. Marco Hua versus Paul Valorans. David versus Goliath, grappler versus what appeared to be grappler. The stage was set, and Big John wasted no time getting us underway for the final fight of the evening. As expected, and as we had seen that night, Valorans was quick to shoot for the takedown, and the whole arena gasped as Hua shrugged it off almost effortlessly and returned the favor with 3 rapid and wicked leg kicks to the lead leg of Valorans. It wasn't long before we saw Valorans change stance to the least favored southpaw, but this meant absolutely nothing to the Brazilian as he started whipping the shin into the right leg of Valorans, who appeared to have absolutely no answers for them. Then we could already see the damage that Hua had done by the kicks and knees to the legs of Valorans, particularly the lead leg where he was walking very gingerly trying to walk his opponent down. It seemed anytime Valorans would get close, he would be punished with a whip of a leg kick, followed by yet another, and then another for good measure. The swelling on the leg of Valorans was almost unbelievable, and the sound of these leg kicks were heard shaking the arena every time they were to land. With no answer for them, Valorans landed a leg kick heard around the world, which would take Valorans off his barely standing feet, and this was the beginning of the end. They say work the lower half of the body and the head would follow, and this is a perfect example of that theory. After a matter of seconds, bathing in an arena of absolute elation, as he was declared the victor. After a gauntlet of warriors, Marco Hua was declared the winner of the 8-man tournament, and he looked flawless doing it. With the likes of Hoist Gracie and Ken Shamrock dominating the sport with grappling, that night he had unlocked a new and deadly weapon that is used and mastered in the sport as we see it today. He showed what can happen if you take an opponent's leg away from them, and in many people's eyes was the pioneer for leg kicks used all over the world of combat sports. If the leg kick wasn't appreciated before UFC 7, it absolutely is now.